Hello, my name is Elena, and I am someone who loves reading books, talking about books, and recommending books. So I thought today I would take you through my TBR for February. I have a complex relationship with monthly TBRs because I'm a mood reader mostly. So I don't like for my fun reading to feel like work. But at the same time, I am part of a few reading challenges because I enjoy finding books according to prompts I had never thought of before, and I enjoy participating in team readathons and challenges. And so I need to have a kind of balance of like keeping myself on track, otherwise, I get very stressed out. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to propose myself a TBR to share that with you guys here, but I'm not going to punish myself for not fulfilling it, but it's more like setting my intentions for the month, and maybe that will help me prioritize. So, for example, I have booked a signing for a new nonfiction book called The Logbooks by Tash Walker and Adam Smith. And they are part of a podcasting production company called Aunt Nell. And I've had the pleasure of working with them and of receiving workshops from them about how to do podcasting with kind of marginalized groups. So the logbooks is about the story of them looking into the archives of a LGBTQ hotline in the UK. And so obviously they have to manage lots of like delicate conversations. They were interviewing, to be clear, volunteers for the hotline, not callers, but still there's a lot of sensitive data, and like it could be re-traumatizing to talk to people. And so I really enjoyed having that workshop with Tash and Adam about how can we think about being careful without putting extra barriers to talking to marginalized people and recovering marginalized history, in this case, like queer history in Britain. And because I work a lot on disability and disabled culture, this is a question that I'm very, very interested in. And so I'm so happy for Tash and Adam for having published this book, and I'm excited to read it. And the signing is in a week and a half or something. So I need to prioritize that. Obviously, it's not, well, I shouldn't say obviously, but for me, I don't tend to steam through nonfiction books. I like to take my time. Also, usually they require like some brain power to kind of understand what's going on. So I think what I will do is that I will break down like how much I need to read by day. This is something I sometimes do with long books or like books I know will be challenging for me if I want to read at least most of it by the signing. Because I'm a nerd and I like to have questions ready before the signing. I know it's not always possible, but like in this case, I was able to go to my lovely local bookstore and get this copy so that I can read it. So I'm very excited to read that. But speaking of nonfiction books that I have not finished yet, I want to normalize talking about books that we're still reading because that's just how it works. And especially with this book called Anna Infinite by Kairani Baraka, who is a disabled author and artist. And this book was written over many years to take into account the author's relationship with chronic pain, for example. And so I very much want to embrace the fact that I read this like a little by little as my own disability allows. It is a very powerful book about how we choose to engage with historical figures. In this case, Anna is the name that is given to a famous a, a child in a famous painting by Paul Gauguin called Anna la Javanaise. And it's kind of this idea of like, what if we don't assume that this is just a healthy 13-year-old? What if we assume that this like child slave, someone who's been trafficked, um, and who is brown, who's kept in the entourage of this like skeevy middle-aged white man, uh, thousands of miles away from their country. Like, what if we don't assume A, their gender, B, that they are non-disabled and that they might not be in pain, either like physical, psychological, emotional, lots of different kinds of pain, and how do we relate to that? And Oka, the author, weaves into like her own story of being disbelieved with her own pain. And like it's definitely something that resonates a lot with me, which also means I have to take breaks. And I think I'm trying to be like better about talking about that. But hopefully I will be able to give a full review once I finish this book. But I wanted to read it in January. It didn't quite happen. And I want to take that pressure off myself, but saying like in February, I will prioritize it. So we will go on from there. A recent release that I'm really anticipating is Half His Age by Jeanette McCurdy. So I really enjoyed I'm Happy My Mom Died, or I'm Glad My Mom Died, or whatever her memoir was. I had no idea who Jeanette McCurdy was. I had never watched iCarly, at least meaningfully, so I had no idea who this person was. But I thought it was a very engaging memoir, and she wrote it herself, and I liked her style of writing enough to tell myself, okay, if she publishes a novel, I will definitely read it. Now, I am conflicted. So let me put it this way. This book is about a young woman who like actively pursues her professor. Now, I have been working in universities for a while, and I have taught people. And so I have strong feelings about teacher-student relationships. So I'm already going in being like, ugh, I don't know. And then the second aspect is maybe a double-edged sword. Like this is kind of like an unlikable, kind of obsessive protagonist, which I do love if it's done well. So that's the caveat. Like I'm a bit worried because some of the reviews I've read are like, oh, this is like really romanticizing, glamorizing this kind of unequal relationship. But I am still curious enough to read it because, as I said, like I really enjoyed her writing style. And I don't think that we shouldn't talk about difficult conversations, or we should only write likable characters, or that we can't address kind of like taboo subjects. I do believe it has to be done well. So I would say Jeanette McCurdy has given herself like a high bar to clear for a debut novel. But I am excited to see what comes. I did note that I do love to listen to audiobooks, and I could have bought this on audiobook, but I made the choice given the fact that I felt so uncomfortable with the premise that I would want to have a physical copy so that I could put it down. Because there's something like for me very intimate about listening. And don't get me wrong, it could have been very powerful to have the voice of this protagonist because it is told from the point of view of the young woman. So it's kind of like a reverse Lolita or something like that. So it could have been very powerful. And so I'm not saying don't listen to the audiobook. I have no idea what the quality is. But I'm saying I knew that for me that might be too destabilizing or triggering in some cases. So yeah, I made the choice of like, for this, I want to have a paper copy. Also, the cover is pretty epic. Like, I don't know if you can see, but like that nail art is amazing. So I was just like, you know what? I will I will fork over the money for the hardcover. But so hopefully I will get to that this month as well. And then another book I'm actively reading, but I'm taking it slowly, is La Tercera by Gina Apostol. So Gina Apostol, I think, I don't want to say lies. I think it was her first novel. But at least the first novel I read of her, called Insurrecto, I read like a few years ago. That novel is wild. It is like an art installation. It is an art piece. It is not like a straightforward novel. There's lots of going back and forth in timelines. But like so far, La Tercera is like a bit more straightforward. But Apostol seems to really like going into like the minutia of like very local historical settings. So both Insurrecto and La Tercera are set in the Philippines. And so there are words in Tagalog and in Waray. The I assume Apostol's one of Apostol's language, but at least like the characters. Um, and so it is. I wouldn't say impenetrable. I would say maybe Insurrecto was impenetrable. I would have to reread it. This one is just like very slow and kind of in the vein of, I would say, Garcia Marquez. Not so much with the magical realism, but the kind of like family saga, and you get into like the politics, and you have, you know, your narrator being like, oh, and since so and so's death, I will not talk about it because it was very traumatic and we're not going to get into it. And as a reader, you're like, oh, so and so was alive like 2 pages ago and now his death is off screen and off page. So I have not finished it. I don't know if it's something I would recommend. Like, this is where it gets hard, but we'll get to the recommendations in the end. So, and then another book I am trying to finish, and this one is kind of for work, is Will There Ever Be Another You? It's kind of hard to see. Will There Ever Be Another You by Patricia Lockwood. So I have not read any Patricia Lockwood before. A lot of my friends have really enjoyed Priest Daddy, and they really love it. I haven't seen amazing reviews for this book, and I have to say, it is very literary, very stream of consciousness, and I have to be in the kind of like brain set to read those kinds of books. Like, my preferred genre is literary fiction, but I will say sometimes there's a vibe of pretentiousness that like aligns with mine and sometimes not. And the reason I wanted to read this book is it is, or has been claimed to be like the first long COVID novel. So I do research long COVID from a philosophy point of view, and I was really interested in having fiction about this. So Patricia Lockwood has long COVID and was like bedbound for a while with it. And this is a kind of auto fiction novel. So I think part of the kind of stream of consciousness, very strange, non-linear storytelling here is supposed to represent like kind of her brain fog and things like that. So far, I don't see anything like I could clearly relate to as someone with an energy limiting condition myself, but that's only one layer, right? I'm actually reading this hoping to write a kind of in dialogue review to contribute to some group writing I'm doing with other disabled friends. So, would I say I'm enjoying it? Not really. But I'm here out of like intellectual curiosity. So that's a different like take I bring to the book. And now finally, this is I've done so many books already, but I want to finish the Vivian Shaw series, the Strange Practice series, the Greta Helsing series. So these books belong to the library, and I need to return them. And I'm also reading them for Her Kid, which is the hardest reading challenge you'll ever do 2.0, run by Q Wordy here on YouTube. And I've read the first one and I really enjoyed it, and then I ordered the rest from the library, and then like life got in the way and I was not in the vibe. But this is, at least I've read the first book, and I would say that it is it's a kind of like cozy fantasy but with murder, or with like some political stakes. So what I will say is like I am personally not a huge fan of cozy fantasy for myself. Like I don't have any issue with the genre. Um I just find that I need to have some stakes, and yeah. So there are definitely stakes in these books, but the first book at least was very much focused on the kind of like chosen found family between this doctor for um, magical and undead creatures and her friends who are like vampires and ghouls and all sorts of things. So I find it like really charming. It has like all the like personal relationship things that I enjoy, as well as, you know, playing with like some tropes. Like I love that there are two vampires, not just one, and one of them is like the trope of the aristocratic kind of like, I've been here for 300 years and I know everything about the city and I own this house with like swords and lots of books and stuff. And the other one is like, I believe I am a monster and I must like choose to live in poverty and like never clean my wounds, and like I'm very confused that I'm not attracted that I am attracted to this like strong woman doctor when I usually go for like fainting damsels in distress, and like this is making me question my whole life because I thought I was a monster who did not deserve to be loved. And like it's very campy, but it's done in such a delightful way. And so we're going to follow the same characters mostly in the following books. And so my library luckily has no penalty fees. But other people have been wanting these, especially the latest one that came up in 2025. So like I want to be kind and return them, but I also don't want to like let them go and then not be able to have them. So I will prioritize doing that. So if we're gonna end by saying, so I would really recommend that people check out the logbooks by Tash and Adam, because I think it is really important, especially now, to engage with queer histories. And as I said, because I kind of know Tash and Adam, I have high hopes that it will also be a kind of showcasing of how we can do like careful writings about communities that deserve to have their history recorded, but recorded on their own terms as well. With Anna Infinite, I would also recommend that. The chapters are quite short. The author did mention she wrote them as like kind of like ADHD style because she also has ADHD. So you can kind of like pick it up. It is like more theoretical. So engage with that what you will, but I do think if at all you are interested in A, art history, B, disability, C, like colonialisms and decolonialism, I would really recommend that. The Patricia Lockwood book, I'm not going to recommend. I'm just going to come out here brave and not recommend it at this point, unless A, you really know you love stream of consciousness, literary, like flowing prose, go for it. And B, if you do want to read a kind of autofiction novel about long COVID, if you're curious like me what that looks like, I do think we need more fiction about lived experience of disability. And so, if like me, you're like, this is a kind of momentous time in history and I want to mark it, then do that. Or take it out from the library if you don't want to buy it. La Tercera. Okay. So, I relate to this in a way because like my father's family is from the Philippines and I'm trying to actively learn more about that part of my heritage, and I do work on Filipino philosophy, Philippine philosophy. And so I have an interest in these kind of like intricate like family dynamics and politics because I can relate to it. Now, not everyone will relate to this. I do think that people from other kind of ethnic communities might relate to this kind of family saga. This is why I said like it did remind me of Garcia Marquez. So like if you do enjoy Garcia Marquez, if you do enjoy like Isabel Allende, I would pick this up. Also like I'm all for promoting more Filipino literature and literature from people in the Philippines, in the Filipino diaspora. Um, I I grew up when like people didn't know that the Philippines were in Asia. Like they um there's been like a big resurgence of, translated Japanese fiction, Korean fiction, and that's wonderful. I've been reading like some Indonesian fiction and some Thai and Vietnamese, and I think we just need more. We need more around. And so I will be here to promote Filipino literature. And so I really will recommend this if you want to tackle a kind of historical family saga novel that engages with a specific part of the Philippines, specifically Leyte or Tacloban. All right, so I should also say this book is set in and around the first Marcos dictatorship. So my family was exiled basically during that time. And so I think it's something that we should all learn more about and kind of understanding also the different factions. So like the main character when she becomes like a young adult and goes to university, that gets involved with the communists in Manila. And I didn't know that that was a thing. I mean, it's not surprising that there would be this kind of like resistance, but like I didn't know about it. And so it was like nice to see it through the eyes of this like young person who is like finding her own like political leanings. All right, I think that is it. That is plenty. I will probably also like listen to some audiobooks, but I didn't even think about that. And I wanted to share this, but also I wanted to ask you, like, what are your goals for February? And are there any books you're carrying over from January, but that you like are really committed to finishing? I think I'm all for DNFs, but I also think in my life I want to acknowledge that there's some books I do want to finish. They're just like taking me a long time because I need to be in the right frame of mind to read them, because I need to have the proper energy, because I align my mood with it. But I don't want to like leave it forever. I do have some books that I started like 5 years ago and didn't finish, so I want to find like a happy medium between like forcing myself to finish things and like leaving things linger for way too long. All right, so that is it for me today, and I will see you next time.